In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Moon Tea Podcast. We are here to talk about craft, community, building meaningful careers. Today, we are graced with the presence of Matteo Vlasic. He's an entrepreneur, innovator, and problem solver with a background in corporate finance, healthcare, and politics. Matteo is currently trying to build a new medium for how Americans stay civically engaged through the Know Your Vote initiative. And about a month ago, we participated in a hackathon civically locally in Pheonix, where we were trying to figure out how to propose a solution for water sustainability and support for that type of thing in this barbaric desert called Arizona. And we got second place. So that was pretty cool and got a bit of prize money. But yeah, that's it. Hey, Matteo, thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks so much for having me, Hugh. I really appreciate it. John as well. Yeah, no, first time really doing a podcast like this, but super excited and stoked to talk to you guys today.
Right on. And with that, did we miss anything? Anything you want to add about yourself? Add a bit of color?
Yeah, no, not really. I guess just for the audience to get to know me a little bit personal level. I'm 23. I went to Arizona State University, been living in Phoenix ever since. I got involved in the entrepreneurship and innovation scene just because ASU had such a big focus on it. And after I got out of college, man, it was trying to figure out what to do with myself. There was no more structure. I had my job, my 9 to 5. It was cool and all, but it was a little bit, want to do something more. And and just got involved in this entrepreneurship thing. It's become a passion of mine, learning more about it and just trying to make changes and do something positive for the world. Yeah.
Heck yeah, that's so cool. Let's get started. John's first time meeting you. Matteo, first time meeting John. Any questions, John? Where shall we start?
I'm just curious if hackathons are something that you're involved with regularly, and what do you get out of it? And if you could just expand on that.
Yeah, no, it was actually really, I've never been involved in a hackathon before. I think a hackathon's a little bit of a misleading term too. I think a lot of people when we were there, Hugh, had that same, issue with it. I'd say more of an innovation challenge. It was more on the business side of things. And it was really just coming up with the strategy of Phoenix, Arizona is obviously, as everyone I'm sure knows, super, super hot during the summer. There's also a growing population of homeless people. And one of the biggest issues is there's not a lot of water access and there's a lot of deaths that happen. So it was just it was a problem that I think actually really exists. And it was sponsored by the city of Phoenix, who were looking for ideas and how to implement them into their strategy for dealing with this issue. That was something that I was drawn to. I also was a part of that community, the Venture Cafe community, the co-host of the event. And I just wanted to try something new. I think that's been the theme of the last year and a half, 2 years of my life, was just trying new things, putting myself in uncomfortable positions and just trying to learn as much as possible. And this kind of opportunity came. Obviously, there was the monetary aspect of it, but I really didn't even expect that it was going to.
Yeah, that was a pleasant surprise, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was. And then actually going to the hackathon and working with the team. We had a really talented team of just a really diverse group of guys from all areas of business. And it was awesome. And we really had a great time. It was great to challenge and to just have that mental exercise of going through what our plan was, the issues with it, how we want it to be new, and also how do we want to differentiate ourselves from just the traditional answer. And I think we came up with a great opportunity, and it's something where I'm I'll definitely do those again if I have the opportunity. But so far, I haven't heard of any kind of new innovation hackathon challenge coming up.
Out of curiosity, what was the solution that you guys came up with?
Yeah, so we came up obviously they wanted the ask of the city of Phoenix was to have it centered around these hubs, and they wanted 5 hubs, and then they wanted a model they could scale and grow to go outwards in the city and really affect all the impacted areas. Our essentially solution was we would have, I think it was 3 or 5 major hubs. We called them oases. And from there, it was going to be integrated with the community. It was going to be built by not only professional artists, but working with schools in the local area to foster that ownership of the project and the area for the community themselves. Because if we just came in and built something, it's not going to really get people to use the structure. It's not going to get people to take care of it. And so with that, we also want to incorporate natural designs to help with the cooling of the water. So one of them was that we would have a deep underground would store the water in a tank. And then we also wanted to incorporate a lot of natural vegetation, like mesquite trees, palo verdes, to help keep it cool, as well as using a moss that one of our team members knew about that I think reduces CO2 emissions by some pretty drastic amount. So that was the main like core concept of filling out what they wanted. But we had actually, and I'm sure you remember this, we had a lot of discussions on like, how do we differentiate ourselves? How do we do something different? And from there, what our idea was to have a partner with businesses in the community and link up to their like local to their business's tap water through these kind of portable machines that you could just put around all the city. Then we'd have a mobile app where it wasn't just something that we wanted to do to help homeless people. We wanted the community as a whole to use the infrastructure that we were building here. So if you're a businessman, you're coming on a trip to a convention center, you walk outside, you say, hey, where is, like, I have to walk from my hotel to convention center. I have no idea where there's water and it's 120 degrees outside, 115, whatever it is. We would have a mobile app where you could like really easily go find a station, refill your water, stay hydrated. And it also was a good incentive to help like the community get involved. What I really liked about it and why I think we actually should have won the competition was because it's the most easily scalable solution out of all the solutions that were presented. Because all like really the hubs, they cost money, it's expensive, but all we would need for our idea really to make it have an actual impact on the community and like the homeless population that needs it would just be to distribute them out and work with local businesses throughout the city, put these kind of refill stations, hook it into the tap line, super easy, cost effective, and scalable. So yeah, that was the idea.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm curious. So you're 23 years old, working in healthcare, and then you're also involved with this initiative called Know Your Vote. Seems like you have a lot of interests, a lot of directions that you're interested in moving forward. Let's see about the Know Your Vote initiative. It seems pretty interesting. So yeah, if you could talk about your involvement in that.
Yeah, man, for sure. I mean, that I could definitely talk a lot about that. Quite a ride. I really got involved with this. It's like a family project, but we actually brought on our new like a CTO who's doing the development for the site recently. So now it's expanding past that. But essentially started, man, with my mom. She's been involved in politics her entire life. That was her career. She worked at the federal level with Jimmy Carter. She also worked with a congresswoman out of Colorado, Pat Schroeder. She wrote and got signed into law the Military Family Act. So she had and then she also ran campaigns, local city council campaigns in Washington, D.C., all the way down to like really rural campaigns for her father in Douglas, Arizona, which is a border town in Arizona. So she really got to see like politics as it evolved from really 1975 all the way up until about last couple years. And when she was running the campaign in DC, she realized, this is back in 2014, that this is when social media started to take over really just like large scale, and everyone started using it and started like bleeding into like older generations. And so one of the things she had to do was campaign was like, oh, get on Twitter, get on Instagram, get on Facebook. And she ran a grassroots campaign where I think they only raised about $25,000. They were going up against there was 11 candidates running for the city council position. And I think they had the next lowest candidate in terms of fundraising was about $150,000.
What? No
Went
way.
up to about 2 million. And they were able to get, for a minute, they almost were winning, but they got to third place out of 11 candidates just through having a smarter strategy for how they ran the campaign that was really like tech focused and using all of the new tools like Instagram and all these social media avenues to get the word out there. But what she thought was like, there should be a platform specifically for this, like a political platform, because, and even when we talk to our potential users, like people that run for office or people that are actually elected officials now, they have Facebook profiles, but they're business profiles. They're not actually for candidates. They don't really service them the way they need to. And so the traditional social media aspect, all these different Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you have to repurpose these tools that weren't built having anything to do with politics in mind for politics. And so she embarked around 2015, 2016 on the idea and the concept of this. And around, I think 2021 or 2020, my brother he was doing his MBA. He took the idea. And obviously, since my mom was from the political side, she didn't really have the business knowledge to be able to get this from 0 to 1. My brother took it over, did his capstone project for his MBA. He got a lot of really good feedback from the professors and the people, I guess, that graded it and reviewed it. And then he came to me and he was like, look, like, this is what I want to do, and we need some more support. I joined, and then we've just been slowly from there taking it on. And We actually have our first real public version that we're going to launch in about 3 weeks here. Yeah. Yeah. And I know that's kind of giving the concept of it, but really telling you what it is. It's just a new way for most people, for people in our era and kind of the digital age, to have a new platform and medium to participate in their democracy. And it's not specifically just for candidates, and it's also not specifically just for people that are already elected in office. We want to cover everything for candidates running, elected officials, how to run your not only like how to run your campaign and being the way that you do it, but also being the way that once you win, how do you stay connected to your constituents? How do you make sure that you're fulfilling your promises that you made while you ran? And also, how do you make sure that you're responding to their feedback? Because I could go into there's so much to go into on like the candidate side, on the elected official side. But yeah, that's the gist of it. And I can go into more detail, or kind of I'll leave it there and just see what you guys are curious about.
Anything, John? I can hop in because I've had a lot of time with Matteo already, but I think one of the coolest things is the fact that you're an entrepreneur creating a software company to support this initiative that's an even larger initiative in a sense, and you're figuring out a way to systemize that process and working with family, friends, and advisors in the industry and
Mm-hmm.
making it a real thing. Because I think we failed to mention in the beginning, which is also partially on me, you already have a website that's coming up and you've been working on it. And
Oh yeah, yeah.
do we want to share that URL now or at the end, or should we
Yeah, no, definitely. So Know Your Vote Initiative, KYVI. We call it KYVI.io. And I think depending on the time of the release date, June 1st is probably going to be when it's publicly launched. So if it's past June 1st, go ahead and put that link in there. To iterate on that, or to further that point, Hugh. So one of the things I think is important to mention is originally the concept is what we're trying to build is a networks platform, right? So you go onto KYVI, you put in your address, we're going to pull up every single representative. And I really emphasize that point because I don't think so. People don't understand. There are other services that will tell you who your representatives are, but no service tells you who every single one of your representatives are. They usually stop at the county level. Very rarely they get down to the local level, and none of them have school boards. None of them have those other random things like fire district boards or water boards. And water boards in Arizona are super important. So the first kind of thing that we wanted to do was build that network platform. But as being first-time entrepreneurs, we didn't really know how to build a network. And so I read that book by Andrew Chen, The Cold Start Problem, and it's like things started to click. I started to realize what the challenges that we were facing are. And what we decided to do was like, all right, our first iteration, we got to go back. We got to scale things back because we were like, first time entrepreneurs, we were like, we need to have the perfect product when we put it out there. We didn't really understand the whole concept of an MVP and emphasizing minimum in that as well, minimum viable product. So we want to have all these features, and we spent so much time, and it felt like we did a big circle just to get back to this starting point. But so much was learned in that circle that I'm like really more confident than I've ever been in the path since I've taken this of what we're going to do. But specifically with that, so what we decided, we're like, all right, first things first, our most basic value proposition is one, tell people who the representatives are, right? Like we went around, we asked people who your local school board representative is? Do you know who's representing you on your city council? Do you know who your water board representatives are? All these different really important positions that matter so much to people in their daily lives. And no one really even knows. And then I ask them always, okay, if I gave you 5 minutes, do you think you can find that out? And the people that do, say yes, I challenge them to do it. And they typically can't, because the issues with politics is that all of these different levels of government are segmented, right? Like the city itself, with the city council and the mayor, they have nothing to do with this district, the school district. So you have to go to 2 different sources online, totally different areas, totally different websites. The way that they navigate is completely different. And it's same for every kind of other level of government, county, state, all that stuff. So we want to consolidate all that. And our first value proposition is just making it easy to tell you who your representatives are, what they're about, et cetera. So right now we have the platform that's going to be available on June 1st. You put in your zip code, and I can't confidently say we're the first database, I think, probably ever, and only one that has all of the Greater Pheonix elected officials, like on every level. I'm talking the most basic level, elementary school district level, all the way up to obviously governor. We have that all consolidated into one database and it all mapped out by zip code.
Wow.
So you just have to put in your zip code, and we're going to show you every single candidate you have. I think I personally have 43 candidates, or not candidates, elected officials that represent me. So it's just a quick way, and we're going to give you a contact link in case you want to reach out to them. We're going to give you information on what they want to do in office, what their activity has been, and that's where we're going to start. And then from there, we plan to build it into that networked platform and hope that our elected officials come on, take over the management of their profile, and use our tools that we built to really help and foster that interaction. Because right now, everything in terms of politics is so passive. And I think a lot of elected officials want it that way because it makes their life easier and they don't have to be held accountable to the promises that they've made.
That is awesome. It really is so cool to hear that the MVP is coming along, and it sounds like your roadmap's being built out in a very nice phasic pattern and way. And
Right.
props.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. It was difficult. Like we built the site, like we have a fully functional site where you can make posts. We have all these things like you can, if you're an elected official, you can, through our website, you can have a newsletter that you can send out in messages via text or email. You can donate through the site. Like all that stuff is there. But really what matters the most for the elected officials is they're not going to get on a platform like that unless there's constituents on it. Constituents aren't going to get on there if it's not elected officials. There we go, back to that cold start problem. Our focus really is on making sure that we just provide that first step, get the traffic on, and then from there slowly phase in all these other features and tools that we want to build up to this ultimate vision, which we think really is going to change the political landscape of America. I really genuinely believe that. So
I hope so. That'd
yeah,
be awesome.
we need it, man. We
Wow.
need it. Yeah.
This is a great domain name, by the way.
Oh,
It's
thank
four
you, dude.
letters.io.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It took so much time. We went back and forth. So the KYVI.com is taken by one of those sites where they like, you have to pay 5,000 to get it released. And so we went back and forth on the name and we came up with this for a little while. We were using this name KYVIUS, KYVIUS, but so many people didn't like the name. We were always mixed on it. And then we just decided, hey, we're a software technology kind of company. We should just go with the IO. It works. Maybe in the
Yeah,
future we'll buy .com. Who knows? Yeah.
definitely.
Is the expectation that the website will be supported by donations? Or are there
So
like, yeah.
yeah, so we definitely want to make sure. Well, that's one of the biggest like priorities that we have is making sure that we want to be a platform that's completely non-biased, has no stake in it. We're just a medium or like a platform for people to connect. We really want to keep it as to that level as much as we can. And one of the good things that we're also doing is making sure that the people that are on the platform that can post are either candidates on the ballot or they are actually elected officials and certified in office. And with that, we can't really say, oh, yeah, we're going to censor these people. It's just the way we see it is like they're elected in office, they can say what they want. Obviously, we have to go down to that level of detail and thinking about how that's going to work later on. But that's the initial kind of concept of it. But really what we want is we want it to be paid for by the elected officials and the candidates. So elected officials, we're thinking of a monthly subscription price. And that's really because when we see it in the more finalized version of it, we want to give these elected officials, these local politicians, because this is just like a fun fact that I always love to tell people. So there's 520,000 elected positions minimum in the United States. That was compiled with data from like 1992 to 2010, I think. So it's over an 18-year period. Obviously, populations have grown, new offices come up with that as well. So that's probably numbers like more around 600, 650,000. But 520,000, that's like verifiable. Only 0.1% of those are federal. So that's your congressmen, your senators, your president, et cetera. Then it's 2.7% of that is state. So your state governor, your state senate, all that stuff. 97%, 97.3% of those positions are actually local level. So school board, city council, all these different random positions, sheriff, all those county level too. So with that, where was I going with that? We were talking, dang, I just lost my train of thought. I brought that up for a reason. Damn it. The question
Well,
was,
it sounds like if there are that many elected officials at the local level
uh-huh.
and there are fewer votes to get those people elected, it's this weird thing where people don't know about those people and they don't turn out to vote for
Mm-hmm.
local officials as much. But in terms of impact, it actually affects people's day-to-day lives like a lot
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. That's actually exactly what we talk about all the time. Is it really does, like, people don't understand how much power these local politicians have in your daily life. Whether or not you need a permit to build like a treehouse for your kid in your backyard, all that stuff's decided by the city council. What roads get paved, and I do remember the point I was trying to make, which is that 97% of those elected positions are those local positions, and they don't have the tools to really do their job well. Like, we were talking to a city council representative in Flagstaff, and he goes, and like the way that he finds out what his constituents need is he'll go to the grocery store, and if someone runs into him and tells him something, he'll make a mental note of that, and he'll like, that's what he works on for the week or two. There's another one here, the mayor of El Mirage, that my mom was actually talking to, and she was saying that she goes around to cars and she sticks flyers under the windows of cars to get people, informed on topics and stuff that's going on. And it's so archaic the way that things are done for these local politicians, because there's no services for them. And as to why that is, who knows? But they have so much impact in your lives. They're so ill-equipped to actually make an impact. And really the biggest thing, then kind of where I geek out about, is I want to make this platform something where these representatives, these local representatives, are able to use like data analytics to figure out what are their constituents actually, what do they actually care about? What are the majority of their constituents, not the ones that make the most noise, but what do the majority of the constituents need in their lives? And then how can they also respond to feedback from their constituents? Because right now the loop is so closed, and it's really only people that can go to these city council town hall meetings and speak out. And those are going to be those hyper politically active people who, quite frankly, like on both sides, probably don't represent the majority of the population. That's where I get into, this is where I think it can really change things, is because I think it can give these representatives that have so much impact, like you said, John, the tools to be able to actually do their jobs well, and to actually then also be held accountable to like how they ran. If they're running on certain things and on a platform, most of the time that just gets forgotten by the time people get into office, if they ever even knew about it. And there's no metrics to judge or to measure success for these people. And I think it's important that we, as a democracy, have to hold these people to account and have to make sure that if you don't deliver on the promises you make, you're going to get voted out of office, as it should be. Yeah, that's just one of the avenues I think that is going to be really important, and what is pushing me to just like really keep building this thing, because I think it's just got so much, the implications of it are so huge. And also, just real quick, one more point, and then I'll hand it back off to you guys. But the biggest thing I always want to emphasize with this is, when we do say building this for politicians and stuff, people automatically think we're building this for like the senators, the governors, and all that. We're really not. It's really being built for the city council members, the mayors, all these people that obviously it's going to apply and work for the higher level elected officials too, but it's really built for that huge majority of elected officials that just don't have anything, don't have any tools, and really, I think, personally matter more, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the Know Your Vote initiative itself. Is that something that is that already a thing in the ecosystem, or is that
No, that was created by us. So we have two like prongs, right? And we're still trying to figure out the mix of how it should work from like a business perspective. But we obviously have the platform, KYVI, Know Your Vote initiative, which is going to be like we're back and forth whether or not to make a nonprofit or for profit. Just depends on, I guess, the strategy that we have to employ. I think right now it doesn't really matter. It's more about just getting all the other more important stuff up and running. But we also did create the Know Your Vote initiative, which was a nonprofit, specifically nonprofit organization. And it is an initiative that we have, which is really to get people out there. And one of the biggest issues that my mom always had was that people don't vote down ballot. And actually, I think only about a third of ballots that people turn in are filled out. Most of the other 2/3 are not. So there's just people like that aren't voting. And one of the issues for that is access to information is just like not there. So we have an initiative where if we do the platform to take off and people to start using it, we want to funnel a lot of money into this nonprofit, where we go to areas that are specifically like disproportionately affected by bad governance. And a lot of those areas are people of color, just areas with a lot of people of color, and specifically like in South Phoenix. We want to go down there and educate these people on, hey, look, like this is the issues that your community is facing, that a lot of the people in your community are encountering. And there are ways to combat that. So we want to educate people, not just like on the ability and give them the ability to know their vote, but like, why does a city council member actually matter? What do they actually do? And how do you get a proposition on the ballot? What is the process of that? So just educating people on just like the general governmental processes themselves is what the Know Your Vote initiative is. And what we also want to add to the platform is a educational piece, which is just going to be telling people what these offices do. So you go on, you see all your 40 representatives. The next picture that you see is you're like, all right, this is my county assessor, my county treasurer. What the heck does my county treasurer do? Like, why would that matter? And we want to have something that pulls it up, gives them an example. We even thought about integrating like a little like chat. I know everyone's doing like some kind of AI thing, but we think it'd be so cool to have a chat GPT bot, which could just tell you everything you want to know about politics and stuff and governance. So that's a Know Your Vote initiative. It's really an initiative driven platform. It's an initiative driven business and mission. And that's what we want to do. So we're still working on if we want to consolidate the KYVI and Know Your Vote initiative into one thing, or if we want to keep them separate. But yeah, it's something that we're pushing that down a little bit further down the line when we get to that point to think about it.
How is the dev work, like the software being built?
Yeah, that's all done by our close friend, Raekwon Garrison. He's a web developer, full stack guy. So I personally don't have too much insight into that side of things. We just tell him what we need. He builds it and it works and we trust him. But he's a guy he's my best friend's brother, and he's a very trustworthy guy. So we've been working with him now over about a year and a half on this. And yeah, he's really talented and stuff. And so he puts together a great product, and he's definitely been very gracious with us coming from the strategy side of things, like having to build things and then having them reiterate and not really having as much feedback as we should when we ask him to do things, and not having things guided based off of user feedback. So that's how the tech side of things work. We're still working with him, and I'm actually making a bigger effort to really like learn more about that side of the business, to really make more educated decisions and educated strategy moves for the business itself.
I love it. That's so cool. I'm analyzing the site right now. It looks like it's front ends built on Alpine with a bit of Tailwind CSS for styling, and on the back end's PHP and Laravel. I think that's awesome. That's a great tech stack. And I was looking at it. It's mobile responsive. It's a progressive web
Nice.
app in a sense. Like, I love the look and feel. It's definitely great. You've got an about us section, mission statement, support us, your authentication's coming along. I think
Mm-hmm.
this is a beautiful piece of work, my friend. You
Yeah,
guys
thank
did
you, man.
not
I
pick the
really
wrong
appreciate it.
partner. This is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, and he's done it all himself. He's really done it all himself, and he's a hard worker. He's got a baby on the way. He's putting this thing together. Yeah, no, he's been killing it. That the site that we have right now, the one that we put up, it's not filled out. So that's like the site we have to the public. He obviously, the one that we have to test is, I guess, a staging site. So we go in there, and that's where we have it more filled out with profiles and all the features work and stuff. You can sign up for all the different cool features we have, which is like, from what we've built it out, like we want to focus on three things: with interaction, accessibility, and then communication, connectivity, I want to say. And just making sure that the process of staying informed isn't just like momentary. A lot of people, they go online, they maybe do their research at a point in time, and that's it. And that's their opinion on the representative, period. And what we want to do is, all right, like in the campaign cycle, for example, we want to have it that, okay, you can learn about your representatives, but if you get on 2 months before the campaign, you can actually follow them for 4 weeks. You can see what they're doing. You can have a more informed, holistic opinion about these candidates that are running to represent you and like to do the things that they're saying that they want to do. And the biggest thing too is, I'm sure like you guys know, I know I've talked a lot about the elected official side of things, but going to the candidate side and like running for office, we want to make it like really my biggest goal. And I think something that would just be amazing would be to have it so that this is a platform everyone goes to, everyone that is like, not even people that are politically involved. They're just like, all right, I got to vote. I got to go onto the site. I'm going to go to KYVI, typing it in. I'm going to learn everything in the next 2 hours. And with that, we feel like we can really neutralize a lot of the pay to win in politics. Because right now it's just a function of the more money you have, the more advertising, the more you get your face in front of other people. And obviously that has a lot of implications for how things are run once they get into office. There was a candidate, I don't want to say names because I don't want to make any accusations, but there was a elected official, or a friend of ours, who was working with an elected official who won, right? He won his elected office. He got into office, and then he had a discretionary amount of money that he had to spend to do a bunch of stuff that I guess that position in office naturally would spend money on. And he gave our friend a list, and he's like, this is the list of approved people that you can buy services from for all these things that we need to have done. And he was like, what do you mean? That's completely illegal. The list that he gave was all friends or contributors or donors to that politician who ran. And now he's in office. And now all of the money that office needs to spend is not going to be done through requesting for proposals and contractors coming to them. It's a list of his donors that now that's where all of the money, the government and taxpayer money is going to be spent, not on the best company. And so that's just a small example. I'm sure there's much more larger scale situations like that going on. And so we want to make it like a platform where, you can't pay more money to get your profile boosted. It's a flat fee. Anyone can run. And we want to have it that the people that win these elections are not the people that have the most money, but the people that have the best ideas, the most capable for the job, making it more merit-based.
That is awesome. It's actually really great because I was reading about how do we make sure that people are informed and just understand issues in a world where we have a lot of misinformation and commercials where people target each other. And one argument that someone wrote about was that the best way to target misinformation is just to have a flood of good information, good data, and like reliable sources, and just make that like 90% of all the information out there about someone. And so this is a step in that direction. And yeah, it seems like a noble cause. Like there's definitely impact involved. And it's cool that you and the rest of the team are just like really trying to build this out. The next thing I'm curious about is you mentioned that you're going to have the ability to see the person's name who's the elected official, probably see the names of the people who are running for whatever the next election is. I'm curious how you are, at least let's say for the MVP, like what's like the basic information that you want to have associated with this person's profile? Because when you have, so you could probably do something like voting records. So that's something it's like a very matter of fact, and you can just put all those voting records. But when it comes to something like these are the issues that are like on the person's website, like that can be more of a factor of like how well the political consultants like made suggestions on like how to write in a way where it's like vague enough, but like a lot of people will see that and just be like, okay, like I'm okay with this. Tricky question, but how are you thinking about the content that is associated with an elected official or like a candidate's profile?
Yeah, so right now, that's actually just a great question because we just had a conversation about that in the past 2 weeks. Because what we're doing right now, obviously, is first elected officials, and then as 24 comes and all these kind of positions go up for election, that's when we plan to have the feature and expand it. So you see the elected official. Now you also see each of the candidates running. And so right now for elected officials, we have name, position, if they have a position, or not position. They always have a position, but party, if they're Democrat or Republican or independent. Depends. Like city council members oftentimes won't have a political party affiliate, but they do. It's like one of those things where they're Republican, but they're not like a Republican city council representative. You know what I mean? But we also want to have district contact information, when their term is, the level of their office. And then we want to go into what's their story. Why are they running for office? So we have the career and how that ties into how they got to where they are. And it could be political or non-political. We also have their about section. So just tell us like a little bit more about yourself. Who is this candidate? Who is this elected official? What's their personal level? Like, let's interact, let's connect a little bit more than just like the professional way, right? And then to what you were saying, one of the biggest, I think, benefits we have right now, for at least for elected officials, is we really want to highlight their activity. So what have they done in office? And you said voting records, and I think that's huge. And that's exactly what we plan to pull in. What legislation have they passed? What have they brought up? What are the things that they wanted to bring up? What exactly have they been doing? And then lastly, their initiatives, which is like their forward-looking plan. What do they want to do? What is the plan for what they're trying to implement while they're in office? And luckily, the good thing is with most of the elected officials and candidates running, they're going to be, they're pretty they're pretty not funded really that much. So they don't have tons of money to spend on these expensive consultants. So they can't, they're limited. And a lot of times, like from personal experience, talk to a lot of these elected officials, and their close friend ran their campaign for free, or their wives or husbands ran their campaign. So in that sense, we really do want to make sure that we're giving an opportunity for the right information to be presented in these profiles. And that said, we are brainstorming a lot of different ways in how to have it more parity, right? Because obviously, as it is, it's really hard to beat an incumbent when you're like running for office. So we're trying to figure out ways to make it better for the candidates running for office. And that may be if they want to have an account for a longer period of time, if they want to have, they could run their campaign for 2 years, right? And it wouldn't have to be that expensive because they'd just be active online. Maybe they're monitoring what the representative's doing. Maybe they're offering that critical feedback on, hey, this is a representative. He's framing this is your current representative. I'm running for his position. He's framing things in this way, but this is the actual impact that they're having. We also want to allow for debates on the platform as well, like live debates like this we have to figure those things out, how they're going to be moderated. There's a lot of opportunity there, but that's the core to what we want to do. Is the biggest thing is we're trying to make it is just fair, just across the ground, like fair for candidates, fair for incumbents, fair for people that don't have experience running for office, fair for people that do. You just like making sure that we get that baseline of equality across all different aspects of the process.
I think that's a lot of really awesome data that you're building for the profiles of the
Mm-hmm.
candidates and
Mm-hmm.
representatives. Something I've always thought about and was like, it would be nice would be if you had such a repository of info and a database of info from a user perspective, as one who has a lot to be desired with regards to my knowledge on a lot of this and a lot of my representatives. I think have we thought about intake surveys in a sense? Can a user join the product and be like, oh, if I get asked 20 different questions, I can skip any of them because they're private. But if I answer certain ones on XY preferences or things I believe in here or there, would there be a function there to filter based on the results of candidates that may have a veracity type of function as well for, oh, this candidate says that their platform is XYZ and that aligns with yours by 80%. However, also note that of these 80% of overlaps, they've only followed through on 40% of them and have a trustability rating of XYZ.
I really like that. I really like that idea. And actually, we've had similar kind of ideas to that. One of the ones that we had was kind of when you sign up for an account as a constituent, like me or you, we wanted to ask like optional questions as well. A survey in a sense, not so much on like political beliefs, but more of like your, I guess, just demographic makeup. So like ethnicity, income bracket, different kind of like characterizing data points so that your representatives can see that when they do some kind of legislation. Another feature we wanted to have was that they can poll their constituents and they can see, say it's just like simple, right? I'm trying to think of a good example, right? We'll just make it up, right? On specific, do I want to get do I want this road to be paved? Maybe it's Central Avenue, right, in Phoenix. And you have 50 people say yes, 50 people say no, but you can like break down the answers based on demographics. So how what of the percentage of people that said no, what would their demographic break out to? Were they a specific income bracket? And I think that could have a lot of implications for things as it goes further. And to your point, which is matching people with candidates that are in their profile or like within their view, I like that idea a lot. One of the things that I'm constantly thinking about with this tool, right, is trying to avoid a lot of the mistakes that I think a lot of other social media websites have made. And one of the issues that just like strikes it right there with me is echo chambering, getting people like, bless you, by the way, John, get you into this box of, okay, these are the candidates that you're going to vote. And we also would probably, I could see a lot of issues with maybe having some kind of this is how you should vote kind of recommendation. You know what I mean? So I think open up us to a lot of risk. I also think it's like a great thing because at the same time you want to make the process easier for people. And one of the biggest things that like prevents people from actually like learning about all these candidates is the time it takes to go through and like thoroughly read all these profiles. So if we can make that easier, that would be really beneficial for them. But we also want to straddle that line of not making sure that we're boxing people into their kind of pre-held beliefs and stuff. You know what I mean? Because I don't know. The way that I just thinking out loud here, one of the things I can see is that, okay, like I have 10 issues, right? And two of them really matter to me. Two of them are super, super important. The rest, like I feel a certain way about. And the algorithm or the way that we would do it would just not really proportionize and put the correct weights on the issues that you care about. And instead just look at all 10 and it's like, you said 80% he matches what your profile for what you prefer, but 20% he doesn't. And then all of a sudden we're recommending a candidate to constituents, to a citizen that really doesn't align with what matters to them.
I think that's fantastic. I think one massive issue is exactly as you talked about, right? The echo chambers and also not the transparency of the algorithms. I think there are certain people out there, while I don't, there's a lot of debate with regards to, you say, even the Twitter acquisition. They did open source their code in a sense, which was actually very interesting for how their algorithm was working. And if I think it really takes foresight and value driven and mission driven technological creators to forward such transparent cultures from the get go and to design around that like a solution. So with regards to an onboarding form, it's pretty much just it's filters or a search parameter, right? So how does one create a system of filtering results? Because basically you're creating a massive PDF text parser for keyword terms to find certain candidates within certain areas, just to because you can't read everything. So that's a, a
Right.
primitive. And then with that though, how might one be able to create a weighting algorithm? So can you make a customized weighting algorithm on the user side? So the biggest question, and I think this is something that I believe a lot of software actually misses, is how do you empower the user to create a crafted type of filter set to have an understanding of the output of what the algorithm generates for you and to be able to have those toggles. And
Right. So just like also thinking out loud. So one of the things I relating that to the concept of what KYVI is trying to do, having maybe those weights associated with like the specific offices that people really care about, right? Not necessarily political views or certain different political parties, but also more, hey, I'm someone that's super involved at the local level, or I don't even pay attention to the federal and state. So like how can we how can we optimize that user experience to just like really focus on what they actually care about the most? Is that kind of like getting close to what you were talking about there, Hugh?
that's perfect. And I think one major thing is, and this is me on a pedestal really quick, is I do for on my free time, I help mom and pop shops or people I meet along the way over the past few years talk about how do you, oh, you have a dream of creating a software product. How are you thinking about that? Are you actually, I've talked with this random gentleman about a year and a half ago at some random pop-up festival, and he was making his own custom app, and he spent $100,000 creating a mobile app native. And I looked at it and it was a 3 out of 10, and it was the most dreadful user experience. It looked really, he got taken, he got scammed in my opinion. So I think one major thing I'm highlighting is exactly the fact of just questioning, and I think you're doing it right. How are you thinking about designing the user experience up front before developing it all versus putting in all the time and effort, especially on things that are super core with regards to how do you empower your users and also what are the primary feature sets that your users to onboard them and have them become daily, weekly, monthly active recurring users and to empower them? What are the main feature sets? And as long as you know what those are, and I'm sure you've been doing a lot of research there, like awesome. But one main thing that I like to just highlight again and again is, do you truly know exactly that user journey that you talked about just now with regards to one constituent might not be able to have the time or ability to within the next day or week know their whole ballot, but maybe they can focus in on a few people. Okay, if they focus in on a few people and their sectors at a different level, does your software support that? And if it does, how might you be considering the pros, the cons, and also how might you design that experience to be more drilled down. The golden pieces to software, I believe, are those things that are sticky, that are supportive of the users and give them real value. And getting to know your users, and or it's okay to target a demographic at first too, like a subset, and then build that feature set out really well, and then expand from that core. So do you, and that's the question, just in general, anybody who's listening, this is my soapbox again, do people creating software, especially if you're an entrepreneur leading it, which is the most admirable thing to create, do you know that truly nuanced, like golden Easter egg that's sticky and causes your users to love and delight in your product?
This is, I think, one of the things. I think we may have that, but I want to throw it to you, and I want to see your opinion on it because I'm curious. Because it's not my forte. It's really not like my area, and that's one of the issues. Not the issues, no. That's just the nature of being an entrepreneur. Is there's so many areas of you have to do everything, and so you're not. I'm not an expert in that at all. So it's definitely like always great to talk to people that have way more knowledge about these things. But one of the things I would say, for example, that sticky kind of feature or experience that's going to get the constituent specifically. Because the other part too is there's two users. There's a constituent user and then the candidate, and I'd even say the third, which would be the elected official. So I think those are probably broken out two different kind of
Three different
users.
user personas, yeah.
Yeah. And so with the constituent specifically, I think really the stickiest part of it would be like the time, right? Because like you can just, it's so much easier through our platform to just figure out the basic information. Because that's mostly what people want is they're just looking from when we talk to them, they want to know what have they done? What are they planning to do? Who are they? So a lot of people want to know their political affiliations. And that's mostly it. That's like a lot of people pretty much make all of their political decisions based off of those areas. So right now, the process, the user experience, right, from the constituent view, is you have to go online, you have to search up. First of all, you have to find out the positions. You have to educate yourselves on what's up for election and who these people are. Then you also have to go in and find from all these different data sources, news articles, websites, Facebook, social media, etc. You have to piece it together and put it together. And so I think from my perspective, and obviously feel free to tell me exactly what you think and no worries on if it's negative or whatever, but my perspective on what would make the experience sticky for people to continue to use us would be we do all of that and we just a 5-hour process and we put it down into 20 minutes, 25 minutes. That's like my mindset or my thinking with it, but totally curious and like open to hear your thoughts on it.
I wish I could give emojis, hands up emojis as a reaction.
Yeah.
I can, I guess, offer my experience in voting in local elections. What I have done traditionally is I will go to a nonprofit that is supporting a cause that I care about. So in the past, it's been climate change. And so Sierra Club, which is that nonprofit, will actually have a list of local candidates that they support who, and like they'll do a lot of the research. And I guess it's tricky because do they have every local candidate on there? No, that's a lot of sifting through it, but it was a great tool for me as a voter who doesn't know any of these names but still wants to be involved in the local political process. And I wonder if there's a way to appeal to the kind of voter like myself who doesn't recognize these names. Like who might click on one or two names and be like, "Oh, nice website. Okay, no red flags." And yeah, if there was a way for a voter to, let's say, rank a list of causes. So let's say you want no more immigrants in your town. You can click on that and then have a curated list of the candidates who support that position. I can only make that joke because my family is immigrants, but let's say other causes like climate change or better bike lanes or wider sidewalks or insert that many causes, and that would be a way of, I think, like making that feedback loop smaller of people wanting things people actually voting for things that are aligned with those needs, and then hopefully in a few years we can see good things come out of it.
John, I'm curious. So this is something I've always been very curious of. And obviously, because a lot of people, as I'm sure you guys are both aware, and how I was before I started this, like I wasn't politically involved at all. And part of that was just because, politics can be overwhelming, I think, especially nowadays, just with how polarizing it is. That's another kind of aspect of a lot of times I used to, when I was younger, try and purposely avoid it for that reason. But I'm curious, like if you had, I know you said that you have these initiatives that you really care about, like climate change. If you had, say you have 2024, you have 20 candidates. I think 20 candidates is fair at the like local level, right? Running for various positions. And you had all the information that you needed to know about all 20 candidates on a screen. And it maybe took you like 10 minutes, 15 minutes each to go through each profile. And I guess, Hugh, this is also, I'd love to hear your answer too. But do you think, honestly, do you think that you would spend the time to go through each of those candidates and learn about all of them and then make your decision? Or would you prefer to have it, as you said, where you put in your preferences and an algorithm kind of spits out like, this is the ranking of candidates in terms of like how much they align to what you care about, or how much your views and their views align to the same point?
I would prefer a, let's say, an open source algorithm telling me how to vote given the causes that I support. I would only look deeper into a candidate if the candidate had a really interesting background or had something that was like super relatable. If the candidate was like a 31-year-old Korean guy, I'd be like, oh, that's really interesting. And because, yeah, that's super relatable. Or I don't know, I'd say a candidate who like was a homeless person 5 years ago. I think those things are like really intriguing, but I think for most other people, I'm not like, there are so many things that are competing for my attention, and it's like for me, I just want to play a part in the political process, and then let elected officials do their job. And I do want to be someone who like shows up to city council meetings and like participates, but that'll only be when it's a cause that I really care about. For right now, it's probably like I want more bike lanes, or like I want in neighborhoods for there to be like safer streets where like kids can play. And let's say it was like my neighborhood and like my child, yeah, I would make sure that my voice is heard. But then let's say it's like the 99 other issues that are like, yeah, I think the tricky thing is there are really impactful issues. Let's say like local zoning and the floor space ratio of like how tall the houses can be, or like minimum parking requirements. Like those are all really important issues. It's just tricky because if there's a change to local zoning regulation, like the fastest you'll see any impact is probably like 5 to 10 years from now. That's so sad to me when I realized that, because I was like, I could spend my entire life doing advocacy and it'll be like maybe my children who benefit. And yeah, but again, we have nice things because of the actions of people from hundreds of years ago, and maybe those things are worth fighting for. But yeah, that's one frustrating thing. Okay, I want to hear Hugh's answer to that question.
I think I really believe in, I really believe in software being designed to support users having the ability to have progressive consensual utilization and or progression. So how might we design software that scales and grows with the user as they become more of an experienced user? With regards to the way in which we use software, there's a law called, I believe, Jacob's Law in corporate understandings of a corporation or a business is structured based off of the mutual understanding and way the business works. and or thinks about product. So you have this department or that department based off of how that company actually thinks. And in the same sense, I think maybe when I say there's an intake form and you give your preferences and then out comes an output, that might be a bit polarizing, or maybe, but let me rephrase that. There are a few different ways to express it. Is when you go to a library in the past, you would go to the librarian and say, hey, I'm interested in the climate. They would send you to the geography section or the climate section if they had one. Or you would go by yourself and use the Dewey Decimal System and go to that section, and then you see the books, then you see the titles. You have the option of learning about the authors, you have the option of learning about the veracity and the education of them, where they come from. But
Mhm.
usually you drill in, and sometimes you go by word of mouth or popularity or ways in which you've heard about them. So that's one example of intake forms don't, by definition and nature, do anything negative. It's how we use the tool and how transparent we are of the software behind it, because it's just the same exact thing but built in software. A second way
Right.
to view it is if you are currently trying to find a candidate, say John has a candidate from this catalog of people and he searches them. Where does he search them right now? Google or
Mhm.
Bing or whatever it is, but Google. You search it. How do you know how that's ranked? That's the whole game of Google SEO. But we basically more or less know how to filter, but Wikipedia dropped down credibility to like 60 to 70% because that can be man, woman influenced. See this other site, oh, it's like the dictionary.com, probably pretty solid in certain ways. That's the current model of searching. And then I believe we have to build out those features of filtering. And that's also like why you have like fake news flags now on Twitter, for example, which is this is not actually probably true. We have to design those moments in software because people are easily manipulatable, easily, especially with deep fakes and AIs now. And then the
Yeah.
third and the future prompting. And this is the future of technology. And it's pretty much just how we are as humans to design, again, and not just Jacob's law to corporations, but I think Jacob's law to human nature is we as
Mhm.
humans have characteristics and attributes. And we all have an amalgamation of perspectives, values, missions, and or beliefs and creeds. With those, that makes up our identity. With
Mhm.
that, we are using the tools in which we create, and the biggest and best creation we have that are instantly right now talking online, right? As we all know, is technological software. And so the next progression of that, though, is how do we design the future of humans integrating and utilizing that software? And as you mentioned earlier, chat GPT and large language models and interfacing like prompt engineers and prompts. Like the future is prompt generation with
Mhm.
output. You ask one question, it understands your profile or attributes, and it gives you back its best definition. Now, one major issue that I have with, say, ChatGPT is the fact that it gives you prompts without doing MLA or ACA citations, right? You
Mhm.
don't truly know. And it's also very Western pedagogy leaning for the data set that it's pulling from. And
Very
so,
true.
how do we truly think about these things of designing empathetic software of the future, understanding that many people, like I have a 94-year-old dad, he
Wow.
can barely understand sometimes how to understand what an advertisement versus a non-advertisement is on Google because they use the same contrast tones that barely pass W3C3 accessibility guidelines for colors, and you see a small ad but it like blends in a bit. It's like most
Mhm.
people can't tell that who aren't millennials or using tech all the time. So that's my
Right.
long-winded response for progressive adoption of human-centered, design-driven software that supports us in our everyday life, and building roads is the main goal that are in the quality way with the right budgets and not being colluded with by your benefactors or whatnot. And
Mhm. Mhm.
that's how I view design. That's why I love design, and I'm a designer, as you can tell and know. But
Right. Right. No,
I that's how I see it.
you have me sold. I'll get on those intake forms right away.
I don't know. No, but like intake forms, there's
No.
one way. Like the other one is filters
Yeah.
with a search bar and you add filters, or there's multiple
Yeah. No.
variety.
But no, and I think it really makes sense. And I think it's something that spurs just thinking about. And I think it's definitely worth thinking about. And it's so easy because, like I mentioned before, having those 3 different user profiles, it's so easy to get lost in just focusing on 1 or 2 of them and not thinking about the other. And I think that's an area that I'm glad that we had that we've talked about it, because I think it's an area that we've been neglecting that is probably the most on par with the most critical parts of what we need to be doing and focusing on.
Love it.
But yeah, no, it's been super
Yeah.
interesting.
Oh, I just want to say it would be incredibly valuable just to be able to look up a candidate or look up an official and be able to see voting record, be able to see all this information if I was interested in learning more. And because the fact is, if you Google someone's name, you might see a sponsored ad above that person's like website or so yeah, just like having that in one place and in a way where people can read it and understand it would be like just that would be a huge resource.
Yeah, and I think especially in the beginning, right? And then at least for the next year, 2, 3 years, I think really like the big strides are going to be exactly what you said there, which is just like these really basic things, like just being able to see who my representatives are, just being able to see what a
I'd use
candidate or an
it right
elected
away.
official, yeah, what their voting record was. Like that's the things that I think are going to be like the huge incremental value adds. And then later down the road, when we get all those big gains that really the system's lacking, which is crazy that it is, and it's been lacking for this long. But then I think that's where we can get into the other smaller ads of the filtering or those intake forms that you were talking about. You. And it's so interesting because like there's just so much area within politics, not only local, and I think like even goes up to the state level, like some of the higher level of offices. It's crazy how much innovation and how ripe that entire, honestly, I would say industry is for just a new way of thinking, a new way of doing things. Because I'm sure this is always one of the things that blows my mind. I'm sure like when election season comes around, you guys see the like millions of signs that go up all over corners. And the amount of money that candidates spend on that is, I looked it up, to get crappy, small, no design, like nothing special for it, just like a bill, like a poster, the frames, and then also like the wording on it. It costs about $1,000 to $1,800, I believe, for 50 signs. And and then you just like, you multiply that by, if you want bigger signs, it's gonna be probably double. And so there's just so much money. And then you think about it like, all right, you're spending how much money for people to see your name in a sea of other names as they go to the grocery store or home from work. And it's just like, there's so much money spent in politics, but so much of it I think is really wasted. You know what I mean? And so much is just unnecessary. And it's just like, I mean, it's one of those things where I always think about, just from the conversation, right? Like, this is one thing that always shocks me too, is whenever I talk to people about the concept and the idea of what we're trying to build, everyone has a unique, honestly, always very valuable insight into what they would do differently in the process, or like what they think is needed. And they're usually all different, and everyone can come up with a few ideas just on the spot. Right. And what other industry can you just think of like, all right, let's brainstorm 10 ways that's going to make this process better? And how many people can just all individually come up with 10 ideas that all make sense, that all would actually make a difference? You know what I mean? It's crazy. It's crazy to think about.
And I'm sure we can chat on and on about this. This is actually really great stuff, Matteo.
Yeah.
And yeah, unfortunately, we're coming close to time. And yeah, I guess we wanted to give you a chance to if anyone wanted to like learn more about you or learn more about your work, what are some ways that people can reach out?
Yeah, definitely. My LinkedIn, Matteo Vlasic. I think I'm Matteo Vlasic on LinkedIn. You'll see this cheese and smile when you look at my profile picture. KYVI.io. You can also email me, m.vlasic, Vlasic, at KYVI.io. I love to talk about this with people. And this is one of the things I thought about that I remember you asked earlier, John, that I didn't get to talk about. You said, do we plan to do this through donations, or like, how do we plan to get this going? We do plan to do it through donations. We are going to have a Kickstarter where people, when they use the site, they can donate to us. We're going to kind of lay out the plan, what we want to build, and what we're going to use the money for, which is really just to be, first and foremost, get our developer full-time, put in the time and effort developing this thing. But other than that, yeah, feel free to reach out to me on either LinkedIn or just send me an email if you're listening to this and curious to learn more, or in some capacity feel like you will have the ability or want to support. And yeah, and thank you guys very much, Hugh and John. It was a pleasure, talking about these things. And sorry if I went on a little bit on some of the areas. It's just like, you know how it is with founders. Like they can't stop talking about
You're
their
great, man.
the stuff that they're trying to build. So I appreciate it.
How dare you ramble on a podcast where you're the guest?
I know, right? Man, I have no manners. What can I say?
Oh, and we ask all our guests this, but what generic words of wisdom do you have for our 15 to 16 listeners?
Generic words of wisdom. This is actually something I've been thinking about a lot. It's I don't know who originally said it, but it's a quote. If you look, I don't know the quote by heart, but if you look it up, I think it's called "The Man in the Arena." I think it was maybe by Theodore Roosevelt. I'm not too sure, but essentially, it's just saying that in life, it doesn't necessarily always matter if you win, and it matters more that you got in there and just attempted whatever it is that you're doing. And just from my perspective of this entrepreneurship journey, I got in here and it feels like it's been a long list of failures, but it's the most satisfying thing ever. And I know that when eventually those wins start coming, those W's start coming, it's gonna be the best feeling in the world. To the people listening, just give it a shot. Do whatever it is that you want to do. Just try it. Even if you think you're gonna fail, what's the worst that's gonna happen? You're gonna learn. So there you go.
You heard it here first. Great. Cool. Sweet. Yeah, Matteo, thanks again for coming on. And for those of you listening, this is the Moon Tea podcast where we bring on amazing, talented, interesting people and talk to them about craft career, meaningful careers. And if you know anyone or if you're interested in reaching out to us and coming on, you can email us at moonteapodcast@gmail.com. And with that, thanks everyone. Have a great day. Peace.
Peace.
Thank you guys.